What up? It's Jiy'S, Creston. I just had a thought. It just occurred to me that since I just did Jiy'S I-Rant number 1, I need to do Jiy'S I-Rant number 1 follow-up sermon number 1 also. So that's what this is, and this is going to follow the same pattern. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go or what I'm going to say, but we're going to try to rectify the issue of everybody's Frankenstein versus Jiy'S perfect creation. Right. So, since you all say, oh, there you go, he says everybody's a Frankenstein but himself, and then you all turn around and say, oh yeah, Jiy'S, what a Frankenstein. And you're all the same mess you ever were. Let's go to the scripture and see what we got here. Now, I think it's either Proverbs 3 or, yeah, it's got to be Proverbs 3. We'll start there. A simple verse that says, you know, how to find the right way in life, essentially, or what the right way is. Ooh, that reminds me. We'll get there after. So, Proverbs 3. Let's see. Ah, yes. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health unto thy navel, and marrow unto thy bones. Yes. So did you all do that? Because if Hmc.³ I did that, and the Lord hath approved of Hmc.³ and geez, we just had a conversation earlier today, and you tell me that the Lord's been hating me for the last 3 years, don't you think you messed up and your Frankenstein is exactly that, a Frankenstein? I mean, you got to think about it. People are actually starting to create, science is actually starting to create a Frankenstein. Do you know that? It's called the Frankenstein cell. By the way, they need to redo Frankenstein. I think they did, actually. I just haven't seen it yet. But science has created a Frankenstein cell. Basically, they put two cells together. One cell that is just tissue and another cell that constantly contracts. And it's a muscle cell. It's constantly contracting. So by programming these cells, the combination of regular cells and muscle cells, they're able to create patterns and give the thing commands so that it actually does a particular pattern. You know what I mean? So there's that. But anyways, what I just said about this scripture, about did you really do that, there's a test that you could find. And a man once said to me that he went to church and he heard a sermon about self-worth. So I said to him, well, where I go in the scripture for self-worth is precisely Psalm 119. And you'd have to read it to understand why, and you might not understand it why at first. See, because this goes back to the same thing. There's a maturity in life that actually understands the way things work. And the deeper you go, the more you understand. And then there's an immaturity in life that doesn't understand, but it thinks it's so close to understanding everything. And it's actually a condition. There's a name for it. It's a formula or a principle or a law or whatever. Basically, people who are just learning to do something. Say you're just learning to work, write HTML. You start to get the hang of it, you're learning basic codes, then you say, you know what, I'm going to learn this in no time. And then after you've been doing HTML for 4 years, you realize there's just no end to the stuff, and it's not exactly easy. You'll be learning it for a long time. Now, I mean, I don't write HTML, so I might be wrong about HTML being that, but it's the same thing with anything. You'll never get... You're not going to learn to pick up the piano in 3 days and then be a maestro. There's just 10,000 hours of learning before you're what's called a master. And that's at anything. No matter what you do, it's 10,000 hours applied effort, experience, work, and intelligence for you to become a master at anything. Anything. So as for all the stuff that Hmc.³ is talking about, you don't want to know Hmc.³ is over 86,000 hours. It makes everything everybody said to Hmc.³ look kind of stupid. You know what I mean? So whereas you said Hmc created a Frankenstein and Hmc.³ is the only one, because Hmc.³ said everybody created a Frankenstein but Hmc.³. Well, what I said was no, there's a lot of people who don't get it right. Most people don't have what they think they're doing right. And a good example is somebody who turns around and says, "Oh, so he says." And we find this example everywhere. So what more can we preach about this sermon? I mean, I say the same things all the time, and it's a very important issue. So let's go here, actually. Galatians chapter 5:15. But if you bite and devour one another, take heed that you be not consumed one of another. And exactly what that means is not make sure you don't bite your neighbor's arms. We're not all Liberians. As a matter of fact, have you noticed that cannibalism is not mentioned in the Bible? You know why? Because it's so utterly disgusting and contrary to human nature that we don't even need to mention it. So consider, men go off to war, they get their armies, they provide their provisions, their food, their weaponry, their clothing, everything they need for the journey, right? And wars are made and broken on rations and supplies. An army can't feed themselves, so they have to go home. That's it. Their campaign is canceled. But then you have something like Liberians. Now, I'm not trying to isolate a people group. I'm going to tell the truth about a location on the earth. In Liberia, there was rebel wars, and they lasted for some time, and they were finished by 1990, I think. And then from the time of 1990, they became cannibals. They would import weapons illegally. The rebels, they would import, knives and ammunition and drugs. And they would import some other things. Like once in a while they get a TV, I guess. And you ask them, well, why don't you grow food? And they say because the government is corrupt. They're not allowed. So instead they just eat each other, and that's unfortunate. But can you imagine the difference between going off to war and not worrying about where your food's going to come from because you're trying to hunt it right now? Don't think about it. It's kind of gross. But that's not what's being referred to here. What's being referred to here is what a person sees when they consolidate three eyes into one and they look and they want to eat other people's souls, other people's spirits. Some would call it jihad of the heart or jihad of the mind. Some would call it witchcraft. Under all the different names they call it. Some would call it spiritual warfare gone retarded, because you're not supposed to do that to other people. That's not spiritual warfare. That's not holy. It's not holy efforts against the non-believers. That's being a punk. See, and we have a few more answers of that, examples of that. Do not bite one another. You see that right here. But if you bite and devour one another, take heed that you be not consumed one of another. So essentially, do not bite one another. Now, let's just see if I'm sure that I know what I'm talking about. Let's go back to the Psalms. And I think it's 14 that says so. Let's see. Have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge? Who eat up my people as they eat bread, and call not upon the Lord? There were they in great fear, for God is in the generation of the righteous. Do you understand what that means? What does it mean that they eat up God's people as they eat bread? It means they try to consume their souls and say, I'm the alive one. That's exactly what it means. And the reason they do that is because they want to be the one who is alive, because they fear the righteous. And we'll give one more example of this, and then we'll call that the end of this video, I guess, the sermon. I guess you understand what I'm getting at. Here we go. Yes, oh yes, yes. O ye sons of men, how long will you turn my glory into shame? How long will you love vanity and seek after leasing? Selah. How long will you turn my glory into shame? How long will you with your Frankenstein one eye look at my life, see glory, and try to turn it into a pile of poop that you left on a plate after you ate the steak? See, how long will you love vanity, pretending you get to be the one who's so great? And seek after leasing. You need this. Just as it says in the Proverbs. It is not, says the buyer. But then after he's gone his way, he boasts. It's the same point here. Now this goes back to one more thing too. How long will you love vanity and seek after leasing? That's the third commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. In vain means calling yourself God. and many do that as well. So that's the message. That's the sermon. That's the I-Rant #1 assessment sermon. All right, 1 mango, need see.